All right, hello again. It is 10 o'clock, and this morning from 8 till about 8:22, I gave a description of the AWD1100 C# programming chapter 7 through 8 pretest instructions. All right, they are out there on YouTube exactly where I've shown it right here. We are reconvening right now, and I'm going to create or demo the project from scratch. I am taping this, and the associated repo will be out on GitHub early this afternoon. So let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is come in here and make a folder that's going to be called C# array lookup. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second thing I want to do is very quickly take a quick look at, okay, so again, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 labels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 text boxes, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 buttons. So 5, 5, and 6. All right, so I've got this here. Let's get into Visual Studio and get started. All right, so I'm going to create a new project. Since it's the only thing I plan on putting in here, all right, it will be a Windows Forms app. It's for C#, but I'm just going to call it the same thing. So instead of C with the word sharp, you can't use the # when you are saving a GitHub repo. That's why I put the word sharp in there. So C#, I'll call it array lookup. All right. And we're just going to call this, we'll call the, we can call the solution the same thing. That's fine. And I'm going to go and put it under C# array lookup. So there everything is. The project name will be C# array lookup with the #. It'll be saved under C# with the word sharp array lookup, and the solution name will be the same name as the project name. I'm going to click create. And there's our start. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger and wider than it currently is, about like that. That should be fine. And as always, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to first change the name of the form. I'm going to right mouse click, rename the form, and I'm going to call it FRM array lookup. Yes, I want to change everything. So that's changed that. I'm also going to change the text on the form. So it says chapters 7-8 pretest problem number 1. That's exactly what we showed on the pretest, was this stuff right here. Then, as I always do, I'm going to change my back color. I feel kind of purplish today, so we're going to do that. And I'm going to change the fore color. No, that's what I want to do, is the back color. So what did we say? We said starting with 5, we're going to have 5 labels. So let me just make one of those labels. This I am going to make darker. And I'm going to change the fore color on there to white because I think it'll display a lot nicer. All right. And then I'm going to do my auto size, as I oftentimes do. All right. And we're going to have 4 of these here, but these are going to be smaller. So we've got that. That's a start. Let's see, we're going to have a text box down here. So I want to make this a little wider too, down there. All right, these might be a little chunkier than they have to be. So let's, however, when I try to change the size, it gets weird, usually. Okay, that's not bad. So let's go ahead and make my buttons. So we're going to have 3 of them down here. I don't know why my size has been so weird, but it is. So here will be my 3 buttons down here. All right, and I want 3 more. That'll be up here. So there's 1, there's 2, there's 3. It's not going to look exactly like it looks in the handout, but it'll look pretty darn close, I think. Okay. It doesn't look too bad. All right. I'm going to come in here and make my 5 text boxes, and then we're going to get started. I am going to make this a little wider. I want to make sure I've got enough room. Oops, that wasn't good. That's not bad. All right, then my text boxes. This will be the first one. And then I'm going to make them here, 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 and here. Oh, about like that should be good, I hope. Okay. All right. Control A to highlight everything. Let's change the size. As always, I'm going to make this 24 bold and Arial. There you go. Now we're getting an interface. It looks more like an interface. It doesn't look too bad. I'm a little squirrely about some of this stuff, so give me a second to fix this. There, I like that. And this looks like it's pretty well lined up. There we go. Okay, so that's going to be my interface. Let's lock that interface into place. Let's quickly come in and name everything. So I'm going to call this search term. This will be my search term in here. And right here, so I'll call this LBL search term. And as it says, I'll say enter ID, comma, first name, last name, or department. Looks like I need that to be a little wider. That's okay. And since I want that to be a little wider, I'll make this a little wider as well. There we go. To relock everything into place. All right, let's immediately set these up right here so that they're centered. And while we're at it, I'm going to set these up here and make them centered as well. All right, that didn't take too long. So, all right, so since this is LBL search term, this will become TXT search term. Now, although the names I'm using, they are arbitrary, they are, but part of the grade that you're going to get is using, basically doing things with names that make sense. All right, so I'm expecting you to use names that make sense too. I'm going to call this one LBL employee ID, and I will change the text to the same. So there's, whoops, I made it a lowercase I, and I didn't want to do that. So employee, come on, Jeff. There we go. Since that is LBL employee ID, this will of course become TXT employee ID. This will be first name, last name, and department. So let's just do those right away. LBL first name, and we will make the text first name. LBL last name with the text of last name. And finally, LBL department with the text of department. All right, I guess I put colons here, but for some reason I left it off on that one. Doesn't matter. So I've already got this as TXT employee ID. This one will become TXT first name. This one will become, oops, I made the wrong one first name. Isn't that nice? So this will be TXT last name, sorry. This one will be TXT. So this should be TXT search term. TXT employee ID, good. TXT, that should be first name. I guess I had it right. So TXT first name. TXT last name. And TXT department. All right, then I need to name my buttons. So this one, it will be BTN search by ID, and it'll say search by ID. All right, this next one will be, this one will be BTN search first name. And the text will be search first name. I hope I don't have to make these wider, but we'll see. Yeah, looks like it. So let me make them a little chunkier, and I'll make them a little bit wider. There we go. Righty. This one will be BTN search last name. With the text search last name. And finally, this last one will be search DEPT. And it'll be BTN, I'll just call it search department. All right, I also need my exit here, so this will say exit. And of course, it will be BTN exit. And this will be BTN clear. And it will say clear. All right, while I'm doing this, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to set my accept button. And just because it's the top one, I'll set it to BTN search by ID. And for the cancel button, I will set it to BTN clear. I will set my start position to center screen. I will set my tab order, but these will, all four of these fields will be read only. I'm going to do something a little different. You don't have to do this, of course, but instead of them being a kind of weird gray, I'm going to make them kind of a mid purple. So right in between. There you go. Okay. All right. And again, you don't have to do that, of course. So my tab order is going to be 0 And then I'll just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So let's do that. So view tab order. Again, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. With all the labels and the like in here, that is even somewhat arbitrary. All right, as far as how I actually number those. So view the tab order. There you go. So we've got all that done. I'm just going to quickly click on my buttons. So there's my search. Come on, there's my search by ID. There's my search first. There's my search last name. There's my search department. That'll be my clear. And then finally at the end, I don't know what I did there, but let's try that again. That'll be my clear. And finally, that'll be my exit. Okay, I'm going to quickly come in here and put in a private void. And I'm going to put my show message that I always use with a string for the message, a string for the title. And this will be showing error messages. So I'll put a comment up above here that says custom error message boxes. Okay, and that will be a message box dot show, and it'll show the message, then it'll show the title, and then it'll show my buttons, and I only want an OK button in here, and finally it'll show the error. So that's done. All right, I'm going to steal my exit from code that I've done earlier. So let me go and see if I can find one. I moved stuff around right before class, which was probably silly, but that's okay. This is an older program, so I don't have one of those, unfortunately. So let me grab something else. That's another language. This is fantastic. That should have one. Should have done this before class. Sorry about that. So here's my exit program or not. Okay. We'll put it right underneath exit. There that is. So I'm going to put up here again my exit program or not. All right. And for, oh, sorry, I put that under clear. That was silly. There we go. And under clear, I'll call my clear all, which I haven't written yet, but I'll write right below it. All right, what do I want to clear in here? I want to clear this, clear this, clear this, clear this, clear this, and put the focus there. Okay, so I want to clear all 5 of my text boxes, and then I want to put my focus back to the first text box. All right, shouldn't be too hard. That should be everything. All right, we can now test, of course. We can come in here and test both our exit button and our clear button to see if they work. All right. So let's do this. We'll go back to design just quickly for not just a second. I made them read only. I'm going to make them not read only just so that when I run this, I can put something in each one of those. That's all. So clears everything. And there's my focus. So that all worked. And exit, no, exit, yes. So that's all working. All right, I'm going to go back and reset that read only on there to true. All right, so I've got all that done. So my clear is done. My exit is done. All right. The next thing, the next thing that I'm going to do is since my interface has now been built, all right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write, well, let's just go to the top of the program. So view code, and I'm back up at the top. I've got my click events, and I'm going to do those in just a minute. That's for all my buttons. But underneath here, I am going to declare and initialize my program constants. All right, and there are two of them. Const int, I think we called it min employee ID. That was set equal to 1000. And const int max employee ID, which was set equal to 99.99. And again, I know I say this kind of stuff all the time. Those were just arbitrary values I came up with. They don't have any special meaning. All right. And I'm also going to create global arrays. For what? I'm going to create a global array that will hold the IDs, a global array that will hold the first names, a global array that'll hold the last names, and a global array that'll hold the departments. But before I do that, I'm going to jump back to my test, and I'm going to do this. Let's see. I'm going to grab all of this stuff, everything that's right there. All right. So let me grab that. And that's going to be my prologue at the top of my screen. How can I ask you to go in and create a prologue if I'm not going to create one? All right. All right. Now it's going to look, normally I put the little dashes at the beginning and etc. I'm not going to do too much of that right now. So we'll be using 4 parallel arrays. Here is the data. I'm not going to put comments here. So in other words, I'm not going to push this stuff off anymore. It's already where it doesn't look bad right now. So I'm going to try to make this. Let's tab these over one more time. And I didn't look at, but I should have tabbed these too. So all right, that's good enough. All right. And the GUI should have these 4 arrays in there. Okay, so we're going to create those arrays in just a moment. Okay. All right, those are the ones. So I want an integer array that's called IDs, a string array called first names, a string array called last name, and a string array called departments. And that should be a semicolon. So let's just grab all that. Now I'm going to get errors until I actually set it up correctly, but I'll put a comment here that says declare and initialize global arrays or program arrays, whatever you want to say. All right, so again, we'll fix this in a minute, but we now have these arrays. All right, so we've got this first one that's called IDs, and I'm going to put those 10 IDs right there in just a moment. Then we've got another one called first names, and I'm going to put those in there in just a moment. Then another one that's called last names. And finally, another one that's called departments. All right, again, we'll fill in these values in just a moment. All right, now, just to make it a little faster, so you don't have to watch me type, I'm going to go and grab those from the completed copy. All right, so give me a second here, because I don't know where I put it. I think it's in here, but we're going to find. All right, let me just grab these. So I'm going to grab the IDs, the first names, the last names, and the departments. Like I said, because otherwise you're going to watch me spend 5 or 10 minutes typing and I'll probably make mistakes, etc. There's no sense in doing that. So I'm going to replace these empty things with their actual counterparts. So I now have an array called IDs with these 10 numbers in it. They're all integers. I've got an array called first names. They're strings with these 10 names. I've got an array called last names with 10 strings, and there's the last names. And finally, an array with the 10 departments. All right. So now I can actually get in where I can start doing some work. All right. All right. Now, one of the things that I want to do, and again, I grabbed this information that I'm about to show you. All right. The is present, the is in 32, and the is within range. I grabbed them from page 219 on the book. I converted the is decimal to an is in 32. In addition, I added a thing in there so that I'll be able to clear my controls. If you don't know what I mean, just please keep watching and you should be able to understand. All right, so under my, right before, I like to do it before my clear stuff. So I'm going to put these in. So this will be a private string is present. Again, I'm taking this virtually right out of the book. String value, string name, and I also want the control to be passed in there, the name of the control, so I can clear that control out. So control CTRL. You do not have to do this on your test. So why am I? All right, I'm doing it because it'll make the program run, look a little slicker when it runs. So string message equal nothing, if value equal nothing, and value, this is going to be whatever I type into right here, this search text box. All right. So, and the name is going to be the tag name that I'll have to add in just a minute. So if that's the case, I want to say message equal name plus is a required field. Again, taken right out of the book. Okay, like that. And then I'm going to call a routine I'm going to put right below this that's called clear and focus. I'm going to clear and set focus to correct control. Way too long a name, but I'm going to use that one anyway. I'm going to put that right below. What I have to pass in there is the control. So CTRL. All right, so let's put that right below. It'll be a private void. There it is. And it will need a control that I can still call CTRL. It's going to be lines. All right. And it will say CTRL.text equal double quote, And finally, CTRL.focus. Okay, that's it. Okay, so this is present. I've got this up here, but it's giving me an error. Why is it giving me an error? Because after the if statement, I want to return MSG. Now, one thing you have to be able to understand, this is returning a string. We set this at the beginning, we set this string message equal to the empty string, meaning there's nothing in it. If value is empty, message will be set to this and then returned. If the value is not empty, in other words, if we put something in that text box, then it is present. So it'll return nothing. All right. So that's the first. All right. Then under this, under the is present, again, taking this stuff basically from page 219 in your book, but they had a private string. They had an is decimal, but I want an is int 32. So it's going to have string value just like before, string name just like before, control CTRL just like before. All right, so this is going to check for presence or absence of control text box text. All right, whereas this one is going to, I should say, because these are data validations. So I'm going to say validate the presence or absence. All right, right there. Here, this one then will say validate the control text box text is an integer. All right. So again, just like before, in fact, I'm going to steal all this, every bit of it, copy it to the clipboard and paste it in here. All right. Now I don't want to check to see if value is empty. No, and I don't want it to say this. What I want to do is I want to attempt to do a parse. And if it fails, so if try parse, I'm sorry, int32.try parse, if that fails, again, this is taken out of the book. Value and out, we don't even need it, so I'm just going to use the discard value there. If that's the case, then name it's another paren there. Then this will say name not as a required field, but name must be a valid integer value. All right. All right. Then finally, I'm going to write one more, and I'm just going to grab it again. But this will be my minimum and maximum. So this one will validate. This will be called is within range. All right. So this will validate that the control text box text is between a min and max. Okay. So this will have to change a little bit. This will still be value. This will still be name. But before I do this control here, let me put it down on a new line. I'm going to have an int, which is a min, an int, which is a max, and then my control. Okay. So I'm going to still have this string. All right, with my message. I'm also this, now I do want the actual ID, or I might. So I'm going to say int ID. And again, if I can do my try parse, now I want to come in here and put another if statement in here that says if ID is less than min, all right, and again, I sometimes over parenthesize, but tough, or ID is greater than max, well, then we put in something that's out of range in here. We don't want that. That should now say ID. So if ID is less than the minimum or ID is greater than the maximum, now we want to do this. All right, so we want to say here that it must be between min and, let's put it over 2 lines, and max. Just like that. Now, if you are confused, go back and read chapter 7. In particular, the pages about between 215 and 225. We have written 3 different external routines in here. When I say external, all right, they're going to be called basically for each one of our buttons. We will call is present. This one right here will be called when that button is clicked, when that button is clicked, when that button is clicked, and when that button is clicked. All right. The is in 32 will only be called when that button is clicked. Finally, the is within range, this will only be called again when that button is clicked. And while we're here, let's give tags to all 4 of these names. So I'm going to click right here and I'm going to give it a tag of employee ID. Then I'm going to come over to here and I will give it a tag of first name. I will give this one a tag of last name. Finally, I will give this one a tag of department. Now these tags, employee ID, first name, last name, and department, those are the ones that are going to be in these 3 functions. That is name right there, there, and there, and there. So when I pass it in, I'll have to pass in that name. And since it's a string, I'll pass it in within double quotes. All right. So we've already got a lot of this stuff done. Okay. But let's start working with our buttons then. Okay. So I might as well just do them in order. That's the way that I've got them. So let's come back. And first, we'll do a search by ID. There it is. And I said I didn't want there to be a lot of code in here, so I'm going to call another routine that's going to be called search for inputted ID. And I'm going to write that right down below this one. All right. And I'm going to have 3 other ones that I'm going to create soon, shortly. Search for inputted first name, search for inputted last name, and search for inputted department. All right. So let's do a private void, put that in like that. Now, think about what we want to do here. All right. We want to first check and see if there's anything at all in there. If there's nothing in there, all right. And how do we know there's nothing in there? We're going to call is present. And if is present is going to end up returning an error, I don't really want to go on. I want to print out that error and return. Then if it does return, if that isn't true, there's something in there. So I want to check to make sure, secondly, that whatever is put in there, all right, I want to check to make sure is an integer. Next, I want to check to make sure if it is an integer, it's within range. So I'm going to call all three of my routines is what I'm telling you. All right, so in this search here, I'm going to make two variables, a string that's called term, and that's going to be equal to txt search term dot text. So that's the actual text. Whoops, that should be txt. That's going to be the actual text that's in the search box. And then I'm going to have another string that's going to be called error message. And I'm going to set that to begin with to be equal to is present. I'm going to pass that term right there. I'm going to pass what I call this in my tag name, which was employee ID. And finally, I need the name of the control. And that name of the control is txt search term. Just like that. Now, you should all know this. This is going to return a string. The string will either be empty or it'll have the message that says employee ID is a required field. So let's check. And if, in fact, if it's all right, if it's not empty, then we know that it came back and it said that it was a required field. So let's call show message. And we will pass in our error message and just the word error. We could put anything we wanted in there, but I'm trying to keep it simple. And we're going to return. Now, if I've already confused you, let's run it to see what it does. All right. So file, save all. All right. And let's run it. Now there's nothing in here. I click this and it says error. Employee ID is a required field. Okay. Well, there's a good start. And it put my cursor right back in there. So there's a start. All right. And I'm thinking about this. I mean, as I go and create a program and then recreate it for you, I think about certain things. And one of those things is here. All right. All this code that's right here, I'm going to be doing for each one of these routines. So probably what I could do is write the routine once and call it 3 times. Right now, what I'm doing is I'm writing it, well, I'm writing this 3 times, is what I'm telling you. I'll have this routine in here and in here. So one way to make the program better would be to just write it once. All right, if I get down to here, so what are we doing here? Validate the presence of text in txt search term. That's all we're doing is we're validating that there's some. And then in here, no text in the search term. So show error. Okay, that's the first thing. All right, next. We want to validate not the presence, but we want to validate that the text in the search term is an int or an integer. So now we're going to say error message, not is present, but is int 32. And we're going to pass in the same stuff. And we're going to do the same thing here. That's why I said probably should do some rewrite on this. So no integer value in here, so show error. All right, how can we check that one? Let's look. So first, we already checked this, but with nothing, we get error, employee ID is a required field. If we put in something non-numeric, we're now getting error, employee ID must be a valid integer value. But right now, if I put in 1, it works. And it works because of the fact that we're not yet validating that the value is within range. All right, so validate that the int in the text box is in range. All right, so we've already called the is present. We've already called the isn't 32. So now we want to call the is within range. All right, and we're going to pass in 2 more things. That's going to be the min employee ID and the max employee ID. Okay, plus we need, again, the control, which is txt. In fact, that's it right here, and I should have put it at the end. So there it is. Now it's working. Let's check that one out. So you saw with nothing, error, it's a required field. You saw it with non-numeric. All right. It needs an integer value. Now 1 worked before, but now, whoa, something's wrong. So let's check. All right, is within range, search term, and employee ID, min, and max, txt search term. That all looks right. So let's come down to where we wrote this, and let's look at this procedure and make sure we didn't miss anything. All right, so is within range, value, name, min, max, and the control. That all looks good. Our message, our ID. All right, if we can't do that, just trying to make sure I wrote this correctly when I wrote it before. That's not a not. That is if you can do that. There you go. All right, then we only want to get in and check this if it was a valid number. So let me try that again. You've already seen this, but nothing. I get the required field message. All right, non-numeric. We get the needs to be a valid integer value, a 1. Now it says employee ID must be between 1,000 and 99.99. I need to put a space in there. No biggie. So let's also try it with 10,000, which is 1 more than the allowable. And we get the error message. All right. We have now validated everything. All right. That is for this. We're not done yet, but we validated it. All right. So in other words, we've come through, and for our ID, we have validated that it is not empty, that it is an integer, and that it is an integer that falls between 1,000 and 99.99. Okay, well, that's a good start. All right, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go and steal from here all this beginning stuff. Search term, the validate that it is present, just this right here. I'm going to copy that to the clipboard. You'll see why in a moment. All right. Now, for the first name, I'm going to call search for inputted first name. I get an error because, of course, as always, it has not yet been written. Private void. I'm sorry, it's not a void. Yes, it is a void. Was this one a void? I believe it was. Yep. Let's see. Yep, private void, search for inputted first name. So search for inputted first name. And I'm going to paste that in. All right. Now this has to change because it's not the employee ID that's in here. It is the first name. All right. So we want to validate the presence of text in there. If there was no text, we want to show an error. That's all we really have to do for the first name. So let's check file, save all. I'm going to come in here and I'm not going to put anything in, and I'm going to click search first name, error, first name, and there's my stuff. If I click it again, boom. Okay. Now I'm going to copy this whole text that's in here for the first name. Why? Because now I'm going to type in search for inputted last name. All right, we'll put that right below here. Private void search for inputted last name, and I'll paste that text in. The only thing that has to change is this has to become last name. All right, let me run it again. And now let's leave the nothing in here, and last name. Last name is a required field. Great. And there's our cursor. So that's all working. Finally, let me grab this text in here one more time. And in here, we're going to call search for inputted department. Again, we get an error, but we'll write it right away. Paste in that text, change this to department. So we've got department in our department. Give me an error here. We'll fix that in a moment, but I want to check last name in our last name. Doesn't like show message for some reason. We're going to fix it in a second. Doesn't like is present either. First name in our first name. All right. Usually what that means is somehow I've removed a curly brace where I shouldn't have, but let's see. I'm looking to see if somehow I removed a, somehow if I came in here and removed an extra curly brace. So let's take it from the, yep, I can already see it's right here. There we go. All of our errors should go away. There they did. So now all my validations have been done. If this is empty, I get that it's a required field. If it's non-numeric, I get that it must be a valid integer value. If it's out of range, I get that it must be between 1,000 and 99.99. All right. Then, all right, for the first name, if it's empty, first name is a required field. Last name, if it's empty, we get last name as a required field. And finally, department. Department is a required field. All right, we're not done, but we sure as heck are getting there. All right. Now, what I said to you a little bit ago, and let me exit from here, is we do have some code repetition in here. In fact, we're calling this every single time. All right. I'm calling it, let's check. Once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. All right. Well, that isn't good. Let's see if we can change this and only write it once. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab everything from here. I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. And below all of these that I've got right below the, for the department one, for the inputted department, I'm going to put in a new thing in here. That's going to be called private void display the error message. Okay. And then I'm going to paste this back in. Well, what do I need? Well, I need the error message. That's got to be passed in. So I've got to pass in a string with the error message in it. All right. Once I do that, all my errors are gone. Okay. So that isn't bad. And I shouldn't need this return in here anymore because it's going to return anyway. So I should be able to get rid of that. Now, this is called display the error message, and it's passing in the error message. So everywhere I've got this, I want to replace it with this, but I don't want to put the word string in there. So here's one. So far it looks good. Oh, sorry, not like that. That was wrong. I want to replace this whole thing in here. So I'm replacing here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, but that's in there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. So I'm replacing 30 lines, all right, with these 6 lines plus about 4 or 5 calls. So I'm basically getting rid of about 20 lines. So this should say error message like that with a semicolon on the end. So I want to replace all of these. So there is that one. There is that one. You can hopefully see what I'm doing here. Whoops. Come on. There is that one. There is that one. And that one. And that one. And I think I've replaced all of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm calling that 6 lines. 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm replacing 6 different calls where I put the same code in there with calling the same function 6 times. Let's see if it affected anything. So file, save all, and let's run it again. All right, there's no ID. ID is a required field. Ooh, and it must be an integer value. Okay, so it's doing that. So let's see. Oh, it's that return statement. So basically what it's going to do is it's going to double show that error. That's okay. I can live with that. Let's do the other ones. So we're going to put in something here. All right. And if we put in something out of range, that's all working. All right. If I do this, first name is required, last name is required, department is required. Okay, that was pretty slick, in my humble opinion. All right. That I did all that replacing. All right. Is there anything else that can be replaced in here? Well, you know what? This string term equals txt term.text. All right. One thing I could do, I guess, is I could make that global. I'm using it in here. I'm using it in here. I'm using it in here. I'm using it in here, etc. So I'm using it in a bunch of places. So maybe that would be a good thing to do. I don't know. I'm going to just leave it the way it is. It's not looking bad. All right, so going back to our test, we now have got this one covered. We can do a search by anything, and if there's nothing in there, we'll get an error message. But none of the rest of these work because as of right now, we're not doing any lookups. All right, we are not doing any lookups. All right, so how do we do that? Well, let's write the first one. All right, which will be for our IDs. And then you're going to see how similar they all will be. All right, so go back to my text here. If I get down, so I'm inputting here. So we checked if it was present. We checked if it was an integer. We checked if it was within range. If any of those failed, we called an error message. So if I get down to here, txt search term dot text holds a valid int value. So between 1000 and 99.99. Now, it may not be a valid ID. So for instance, if I put in 5678 and I don't have an employee with a 5678, that isn't valid, but it's valid in that it meets all the criteria. All right. So this is what I'm going to do. I am going to write a for loop. Again, I got emails from people who came back and said, when I do this, I'm going to go through this right now. Let me write the whole thing because it's only about 5 lines. Now I'm going to get an error message here because I'm going to call a routine I haven't written yet, which is called show the data. Okay. And then I'm going to return. Finally, not return. Return. There we go. Finally, if I get down to here, I'm going to call show no data. All right. And I'm going to get an error there because that hasn't been written. Let me comment these out just for right now. And we're going to go over what they both mean. But I want to go over first what's going on in here. This is a for loop. It's going to go from 0 to less than the number of IDs I have. I've got 10. So it'll go from 0 to 9. All right. This basically says if the current ID, all right, which is this, is in the array, in the IDs array. That's what it's doing. So if that's the case, I want to show the data for that employee. All right, and I'm going to uncomment this and write that in just a moment. If I get down to here, there was no match, i.e. no employee with that ID. All right, so show error in each of the 4 text boxes. In other words, the text box for first name, the text box for last name, the text box for ID, and the text box for department. Let's write these routines quickly. They're not long routines. All right, but I will write first the show no data. This one, the show no data. So I'm going to put it way down on the bottom. It's called show no data. I'm going to put it right before my clear. There it is. So a private void show no data. It has nothing passed into it. And basically all it's going to do is it's going to say the ID dot text equals the word error. The first name dot text equals error. The last name dot text equals error. And the department dot text equals error. Finally, I just might as well clear out that text box, the one for my search term dot text. That'll equal nothing. And let's give it the focus. Okay. So we can do that. TXT search term. I want it up here. So TXT search term dot text again will be equal. It'll be equal to nothing. So we want to clear out what's in there. And I guess we're doing that right here. So that's okay. I'm going to have to repeat it, but I spelled search wrong. There. So this is the case where we put in either an ID or a first name or a last name or a department that are not in the array. Just to show you what I mean, right now it's going to call this every time. Right now this is going to be called every time. This will not be called because we commented it out. Okay, so I'm going to comment out this whole for loop just for a second. Write it. So this is going to call show no data. So notice when I come in here, even if I put, it doesn't matter what I put in now, I'll put in hello. And I'll search by first name. Well, it didn't work, but it should have just said error, 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 error. And it didn't. Something is goofed up. We'll fix it in just a second. So we're calling here, let's see. We got down to this. Oh, we're not, well, we're never calling it. I don't know why. Let's go back in and put in the for loop. All right, and let's go over what the for loop is talking about. We are asking right here to go through the entire list of IDs. If you find one, call show the data, and we want to pass LCV. That means that's the location in the array. Let's go and grab and write that right now. We've already written the show no data. So let's write the show the data. So private void show the data. If you don't like what I used, you could call it whatever you wanted. And it's going to have the LCV, the loop control variable, passed in. All right. Now, I haven't written it yet. I'll write it in a second. But now the error that was up there before, where we called it, that error is gone. Okay. All right. So inside of here, we want to write this. What do we want to do? Kind of the opposite of what we just did. In other words, rather than taking all of these and writing in there error, all right, rather than doing that, and I'll just copy it over for right now. No, they're not errors. What we want to do in here is we want to put IDs LCV dot toString. And then this one is first names. Since it's already a string, we don't have to do a dot toString. That doesn't make a lot of sense. And then we've got our last names last names LCB. And finally, we've got our departments LCB. All right. I like to line these up because I think it makes it easier, whoops, for a person to read. You may or may not agree. All right. Now, I don't know if it's working right now or not, but I'm going to try it. Now, it's not complete because the only thing I can check right now, the only thing I can check, the only place I have this for loop right now, oh, yeah, is in the ID in here. So let's see, though, if it does work. Now, in order to do that, I'll have to get a couple of valid IDs. So we've got 1347 and 5513. So 1347, there it is. We'll clear it. And 5513. Okay, so far it looks good. And if we put in something that doesn't exist, we get error. So that's working. All right. So we can now search by ID. All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all of that code that I just put in, this space, the for loop, everything down to show no data. All right. I'm going to take it. Now I'm going to copy it to the bottom of our last name. But I have to make changes. All right. Because it doesn't matter which one of these because all the arrays are the same size. But this, I'm going to make first names. This one has to be first names. Now I should be able to search by employee first name as well as by ID. So we already saw it by ID. That works. But now if I put in Gail, I know there's a Gail in here. Okay, something's wrong. We'll fix it. All right, it should have found that, but it didn't. Okay, there's a problem. Let's go fix it. All right, first name. So first names.text. If first name contains term, show the data in return. Otherwise, just show the data. So that should say there was no ID with that first name, but that's in a comment. So why isn't this working? All right. LCV equals 0, less than first names dot length. If first names LCV dot toString. Okay, the check has got to be made differently in here because I have to take term and do a dot toString on there as well. I didn't have to do it on the first one because I'm checking a number. All right. On this one, I had to do this. I had to convert the array value from a number to a string, but this was already a string. All right. Now let's see if it works. Hoping it does. Try Gale again. All right. That wasn't the problem. There's still an error. We're going to fix it. All right. I'm not going to stop this lecture today until this is working. All right. So inputted first name, term, first name, term, first name. Length LCV plus plus. Names LCV dot just. Oh, I have to make sure I'm comparing apples and apples. I'm going to take both of them and do a dot to upper on both of them. So I'm comparing something in uppercase with something that's in uppercase. Because right now there may or may not, if I put in Gale, but I put in all lowercase, and in the array, if it's in an all uppercase, it wouldn't match. Let's see if that fixed it. So Gail again. There's Gail. All right. I should also be able to do a partial match. Type in Gage. All right. I know there is a Joe in there, so I'll just put a J-O. And there's Joe. So I can do a partial search. That works. And the great news is all I want to do now is grab all of this code that's right there. And now I can put it at the end of my last name. But I want to make sure that I changed everywhere it says first names now to last names. All right. And now that I look, this comment doesn't make any sense anymore. So TXT holds a valid first name. And here it holds a valid last name. And when I say valid, there's something in there. If I put 1, 2, 3 in for a first name, it thinks that's valid because there's something in there. So that's my last name now. So this will have to be last name. This I can make last names.text. This must be last names. All right. And this should be last name. Let's look at a couple last names in here. We've got Green and Jones. So let's try those. First of all, let's put in a non-existent last name. So I'll put in Scott. And it doesn't find it. Good. Now let's do Green, but let's just do GRE for Green. And it found Greg Green. All right. And we also had a Jones. So let's mix up the casing here just to make sure it works. So Jones, and it found that. So the only one that we have left to do right here now is department. So I'm again going to just grab it from the last one that I put in, which was last name. Right there. I grab all that, copy it to the clipboard, and on the bottom here of my department, I want to put that in. So this will have to change to department. Oopsie. Oh, what did I do? Good gravy, Jeffrey. Try that again. With that department, this will have to say departments. This will say department. All right. Finally, let's run it again. We'll put an invalid department name in there. And we get all errors. There is an information technology department, so let's put in tech. And we get that. All right, we've got a web programming in there. Okay, it doesn't like that, and it doesn't like that because I clicked the wrong button. So there's web programming. We've got a database. So let's put DAT. There's database programming. We've got a networking, so let's type in work. Okay, everything's working. Now, could this be improved? The answer is, of course it could. First of all, it's only finding the first match. All right. We could actually do a thing in here where we checked, and we'd have to write it a little differently, but we could see how many matches there were. I think I put in 2 employees from each of the 5 departments, or I don't remember what. All right. But it's totally working now. All right. If I put in 1347, I can even hit the enter key and boom, I get that. Or if I put in 5513, those are the only 2 I remember that are valid. Now, it's not a beautiful interface. It's not a wonderful interface. All right. It's totally fine though. I think it looks okay. All right. You are going to basically have something similar to this tomorrow. It will not be identical. It will be similar. All right. And you will have to write it once, kind of just like we did here. All right. Using the data validation and arrays. And you'll have to write it again. And when you write it the second time, all right, you will be using lists instead of arrays. And you will be using try-catch instead of pure data validation. All right. Now I'm going to make one more video a little bit later today. All right. In fact, I'll probably do it right when I get done with this one. Because if you remember, the one that I did yesterday with lists works. The one I did with lists works, 8-2. The one I did with arrays doesn't work completely. And what I mean is the one that I did with arrays, if you print out how many things are in the list partway through again, and then you go back and add a few and print it out again, it doesn't have the right number of things in there. I'm going to look at that. I should have done it earlier. I didn't. Sorry about that. All right. Just was wondering, I don't know. Would the text that's in here, you can draw your own conclusions, but I'm going to grab that text. And would the 4 color look better as white? I don't know. So let's look. Well, I thought I did it, but I guess I didn't. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 color. Right again. 1, 3, 4, 7. Okay, I don't know if that's better or worse. Draw your own conclusions. All right, I'm going to leave that as black because I've got a white background there. I'm going to leave it the way it is. I kind of like that. All right, so this is what you're going to be expected to be able to do tomorrow. All right, I again will have the I will have the hands-on test to you tomorrow by 7. I was a little late today, sorry, but I'll have it to you tomorrow by 7. I'll take 15 or 20 minutes tomorrow to go over the instructions for the test and probably even run the test so you can see it. Again, it'll be 2 problems. It'll be virtually the same. One will involve the use of arrays and data validation. The other one will be lists and try-catch. Or I might put arrays and try-catch and lists with data validation. I don't know. All right. I will show you, as always, pretty much what the pretty much at least what this should look like. Okay, what, you know, so you'll have pictures of what it should look like. Now, just so you're aware of this, last thing, because I'll be done before 11:30 today. All right. That when we reconvene next week, so tomorrow's the test, yes, but next week we are going to be going over chapters 9, 10, and 11. So chapter 9 is on how to work with dates and strings. There is material in there we've already gone through. All right. 10 is more skills for working with forms and controls. Some of that material we've gone through, but they talk in a little bit of depth and breadth of coverage in there about radio buttons, list boxes, drop-down lists. So we're going to be introducing some new controls, group boxes, all right, list boxes. I think those are the 5 we're going to go through. Then chapter 11 will be on debugging. All right. Now, when you look at this from 273 to 373 is about 100 pages. I don't know if we're going to go through all one next Monday, or if we don't, we'll just go through the first 2 chapters on Monday and then the third one on Tuesday. Then we'll go through, and again, I'll make the determination, but looking in here, go back up to the top, you'll notice there won't be any labs, but there will be 5 different homework problems to do. I will probably do 1 of them. Then because you're going to have 4 to do. It's not a lot to ask of you. That will not be due this Sunday. It'll be due the following Sunday, which is the 18th. So you can plan on then Tuesday, we'll probably go over chapter 11, and notice there are no exercises for chapter 11. And then we'll go over 1, maybe 2 of these. I'll have to look. All right. Wednesday, a week from today, we'll have another pretest. All right. It'll have 1 problem on it. I know that because I've already written it. And it's kind of a goofy example. It's a GUI, but it's sort of, I don't know, you might look at it and go, who'd ever do this? But it's all right. And then a week from tomorrow, we will have our hot number 4 on chapters 9, 10, and 11. The reason I'm telling you all that is after that. So 1 week from tomorrow, the 15th, I believe that is. All right. Then the week after that, we will be going into this. This will definitely be the hardest part of the book thus far. We will spend the entire week of the 19th. That entire week will be spent on chapter 12. All right. Then what I'm leaning towards right now, what we will probably do is the next week we will go over 13 and 14, not have any tests. Then the week after that, 15 and 16, and then have 1 test on 13, 14, 15, and 16. There's a lot of stuff in those chapters that I'm not going to hold you responsible for. All right. Okay, then after we get done with that, we'll go through 17 and 18. Boom. Then we'll jump into databases. The faster we get into databases, the more time you're going to have to work on stuff that we're going to be working on for the rest of the semester. All right. And then finally, just so you see it, I've already gone out to GitHub. And I've got a repository, I think that's the same name I used, C# array lookup. I think that's the name I used. I'm going to double check. All right. And I'm going to create the repo. Let's first double check and make sure that's what I used. C# array lookup. So that's it right there. All right. Then I'm going to jump back into here. I'm going to grab this line, as I always do. Try that again. Copy that line to the clipboard. Go into my folder here. I'm going to do one last file, save all on this. I'm going to exit this. I'm going to right mouse or double click. I'm going to come in here, do a git bash here. And I'm going to type in git init. When I hit enter, you already know it should make a git folder in there. There it is. I'm going to do a git add dot to add everything. I'm going to do a git commit -m, and I'm going to put in here array lookup problem done in class Wednesday 6/7/2023, not 7/7, 6/7/2023. There's all that. I'm going to paste in this where we set the remote origin. I'll double check to make sure it's okay. Git remote minus V, that looks good. I'll do my git push minus U origin, and again, minus master, yours may be main. It'll spin for a second. This isn't long, boom, it's done. I'm gonna clear, won't exit for a second yet. Let's go back to here, refresh. Well, that isn't good. There it is. All right. I've got, for some reason, tree master on all these names. I screwed up, and that's on me. All right, but there it is, the array lookup 1 minute ago. So that is already out there. If you want to look at it, if it can help you tomorrow or whatever, and it's out there here. Right? You will get a in just a few minutes after I produce this, it'll be out on YouTube, and it'll also have that, in the email that I send you. All right. Any questions between now and then, feel free to get a hold of me. Email me at jpscott@ranken.edu. Tomorrow morning, again, I will go over between about 8 o'clock a.m. and 8:20 a.m. approximately your test. All right. So I'm going to stop now. And what I'm actually going to do is see if I can fix the error that's in program 8.1 that I did yesterday. If I can fix it, I will do one last video today. All right. And I will send you the link to that one as well. All right. I am not taking 8.1 and 8.2 and putting them in a repo. That's homework. You still must do that. All right. I think that's good. I think it's time for me to shut up now. So talk to you tomorrow morning at 8:05, at 8 o'clock, I should say. Have a good day. Thanks.